Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is kind of a new thing for my channel. I recently reinstalled Napoleon Total War and just to play the multiplayer, and I had a really interesting match the day that I did it, which was actually just maybe an hour ago. Um, so yeah, I saved the recording to the match, and I'd love to show it to you. I'm playing as the Prussian Königreich. Um, Königreich meaning empire, I believe, or kingdom. Um, I have the armies are set to large. And we're given a large amount of funds. I have a standard general staff, a large amount of musketeers, and some Prussian fusiliers, which are light infantry, which have an increased range, and some Silesian Schützen, which are basically skirmishers, long-range rifles. Some Brandenburg Uhlas, and some Lancers, along with 3 howitzers. These will all be put into a somewhat more convenient form later. Excuse me. My ally over here, Mr. Scott March, Scottman 697, I believe. I don't know, I can't read my own handwriting. Has a French force consisting of many chasseurs, which are the French version of light infantry, if I remember correctly. Some 6-inch howitzers, and some rocket troops. I believe both sides have had rocket troops in this game. He also has a lot of fusiliers of line and general staff. I feel I should mention the extra rules, the courtesy rules of this game, were a maximum of 4 artillery units and 5 light-foot infantry, being that some people like to use extra, and some people believe it imparts an unfair advantage to the game. And it makes the game rather droll and boring. And once we get to the other end, to the end of the deployment phase, I will show you our opponent's military skills, as well as their opening strategies that I will have used against them. Alright, so I'm going to pause it again. Alright, so I'll go ahead and give my initial strategy. My initial strategy was to take these troops and move them up here, put them underneath the cover of this hill to protect them from these 12-inch foot artilleries, or really from any artillery that the Swedish had put up there. Just hide behind the hill, wait for the French to engage across the river over here, and then try and flank the Swedes, splitting them up over here and paving our way for a conquest to the hill. This could, of course, easily be countered by the Swedes, just chilling on the hill, which is a heavily defensible position. Very hard to get your enemies when they're in there. And this prong over here was just to advance and more or less just kind of fight the battle, see how the battles swing, and sort of go on a defensive-ish route, but an aggressive defense. Meaning we move forward, set up a line, and then let the Russians haul into us. It doesn't all go so well, as you'll no doubt see somewhere towards the middle. And I'll now show you the Swedish forces. The Swedish forces have 4 cavalry units, some line infantry, a high-ranking general, I believe that's King Karl the 14th, Karl Johann the 14th. Looking for it. I know I saw Fusiliers at some point, or not Fusiliers. No Lightfoot for them, but 4 heavy artillery units, So a rather expensive army with expensive units. The Russians have 2 rocket troops here in the back, and they will use them to devastating effect during the game. 4 cavalry units, a general staff, a lifeguard foot, and a Russian Yagers, which are basically which are basically light infantry. Which I believe he has 1, 2, 3, 4. Now he has 6 of them. I feel so much better about how that game went. So the first thing I do is send my line infantry up here to form a column of 2 with a reserve of rank of 3. I send my howitzers up to form a line over here behind the infantry to bombard the Russians that come towards us. I send my Prussian Fusiliers up here to form this any That's so terrifying. You can see the French allies rockets over there blowing up. These are the unit positions over here. You can see us gradually moving out to go stand underneath something. The interesting thing, the thing I found interesting was, initially, not much really happened. He set up a strong defensive anti-cavalry wall, but other than that, not much. Mostly held this wall, kept the cavalry back here, while the Russians and the French basically just shot rockets at us, or at each other. The beginning of the action actually kicks off over here with a quick flash pan of right around here, and they immediately get the jump on me with their rockets, which, by the way, I did not bring rockets because they have many disadvantages, such as being immobile, in general, typically very hard to aim. But and they have the unfortunate effect of right about here, convincing my horses that war isn't that fun. And my cavalry kind of bug out. So I'm already down 1 unit of cavalry, which altogether really isn't that bad. You can get by without the cavalry if you play your cards right, but it gets harder and harder to play your cards right as the Russians concentrate all their forces against me, whereas I have mine split to deal with the Swedes, which I didn't want to. What basically proceeds is a rocket barrage. The Swedes rush some cavalry over here, but they run into a French, the French chasseurs. Basically, the final is and shot. So I'm going to zoom out over here. I'm just going to keep my eye and make sure the gents over here don't get themselves killed just yet without watching. Put their biggest advantage right now, their cavalry mobility over us, into a disadvantageous position, a kind of narrow, not very movable area where they are bogged down. They're basically stuck. And they're not going to be of any use to Sweden over here. So he's gotten a lot of his advantage knocked out for that. He's lost 2 units of cavalry, he has 2 of these. And that's not very good for Sweden, because most of their firepower and their kick comes from the cavalry. Now over here I moved the Fusiliers up, just as the Russian gunners begin to open fire. They moved their 6-pounder horse artillery over here, and then cover it with mounted rifles, which are a rather annoying cavalry. I say rather annoying form of cavalry because they kicked my ass repeatedly. Then my Prussian Fusiliers open up, and these are my first true shots of the battle. I feel like that's a bit loud. I'm gonna pop into this. Alright. So here they are, firing. Just give you a cool cinematic shot. I begin to move my line infantry up, but over here they're taking some pretty major losses because all these infantry, for some god knows why reason, shooting at this one guy, this one unit. They're just kind of whittling it away. And then also, unbeknownst to me, I had somehow clicked the fire at will button, which means I had set them to hold their fire until I told them to. Which means that these gents will line up here, prepare to fire, and then just kind of chill. And get shot at. So I believe they stand here for a few moments before I finally realize my mistake. Oh, that's, by the way, my howitzer is firing an explosive shot. And you'll tell when I realize my mistake. It becomes pretty apparent by the wall of fire that erupts. So, there we go. This is about the time I realize my mistake. And I begin sending all my units to fire at will again. It takes about 30 or so seconds. But once again, these rockets are still firing on my guys. They're not the most accurate things in the world, but against soft targets, they'll do. And also, I think those are just some pretty lucky shots against my... they're called cavalry. Shoot them. The Russians charge into my Fusilier lines, which are not very good at melee. And around this time, I begin to drag the rest of my units from over here back, while the Swedes make one of their first moves down this hill. I'm entirely sure why these 12-pounder foot artillery is never unlimbered. Looks like an oversight by the king here. Liked his cannons limber. The Swedes over here move to attack the French in some way, while over here, my Prussian army, in all honesty, basically gets decimated. And so at this point in time, my Fusiliers are not going to hold this line, and I'm, in all honesty, still trying to relearn the controls. And I had my German doing some stupid stuff, like walking through the battlefield, somehow surviving long enough. And my Fusiliers here managed to somehow take on cavalry unit, I suppose, through superior firepower. These gents do pretty well for themselves for a little while, but eventually I realized I'm not going to win over here. Just like in real life, there's just too damn many Russians. So I decided to pull back to an alternate line and reform my line back here. I'm okay with giving up this ground, it's not that important. Pull back all my gents, and I decide to sacrifice these Prussian Fusiliers for the greater good of the Empire. Right now, the greater good of the Empire is the rest of his army. And so they're going to stand here and basically get blown to bits. And at the time, I did not know that these gents were deciding to casually walk through the battle. So they stroll along for a little while before being picked off. But eventually I catch my mistake and make them run. The Swedes have set up a defensive line over here. They're going to set up one along this road right here. And some Jagers up here. And a defensive line back here, covering that direction. Assuming the French will cross over here. And the French continue their bombardment from up there. if those cannons are on Limbergate, I can't tell. Alright, so this will be the end of part 1 right here. Currently we are in a slight retreat, moving backwards. Our units are falling back. Our cannons are endangered. The Swedish and the French have reached a stalemate at the river, and I am in a losing fight with the Russians. So far, currently, we are losing the battle. I will see you all in the next part to see what happens next. Thank you for watching this part. I look forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye.